共请大德圣地为此法会，及一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死离苦得乐。殊真无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanbuddhoche. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, medicine master, Buddha. 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 Medicine master does come one, medicine master does come one, medicine master does come one, medicine master does come one. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome back to this week's exploration of the Dharma based on the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. Okay, let me get slideshow going. Today is class 109. And we are going to continue on loving kindness. And before we do that, does anyone have any questions? As usual, I have a question. I mean, someone has already asked me a question about the difference between noble wisdom and transcendental wisdom. Yes, Ruiling?
Yes, I would like to ask a question, please.
Yes, go ahead.
It's regarding this loving kindness meditation. So that day there was a slide on the loving kindness meditation. And it is said that when you do the meditation, you do not just repeat to yourself, may I be well, may I be happy. What you must do is this, can you correct me if I understand it wrongly? Is it that you must bring forth the whatever virtues? Is it that bring whatever virtues, for example, generosity and whatsoever, and then from these virtues, then when you do the meditation, you wish for other people to feel the same way as you would feel for yourself if you were hurt or if you were suffering, etc. Then only the meditation will be effective. And then you can go to the jhana states, absorption. With that virtue, you can get into absorption states. Is that correct?
Yes, very good question. So your question, let me see if I understood your question correctly. Your question is that how you begin with practicing loving kindness is not just about repeating, may I be happy, or may I having the wish to be happy, but you also recollect your wholesome virtues, right? That's the first part of your question. Am I correct? Okay. Well, maybe you won't. Okay, if I'm incorrect, then
yes,
okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then the second part of your question was, let me see if recollect. Then after you have done it, then you begin to expand the feelings of loving kindness to other people, and then that is how you can enter absorption or the dhyanas. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, did I
Is it
miss out
correct?
anything?
No. Is my
Okay.
understanding correct?
Yes, your understanding is correct, except for the first part. It is the practice of loving kindness. If you look at some of the sutras or some of the explanation given, usually it is just wishing for oneself to be happy. And that's the first step. And that's what you do before you wish for others to be happy. Because you can try it for yourself. You can look at your own experience in life. It is very, very difficult to wish that other people be happy if you are not in a happy state. If you're not happy with yourself, if say someone is undergoing depression, for example, it is very, very hard to wish for others' happiness. So that's why loving kindness has to start with the self. And there are two ways that you can start with the self. One is for some people, okay, they just by the wish that they are happy, they can generate loving kindness for themselves already. Some people are like that. And so that's why some of the practices are very straightforward. Oh, yes, Sriling?
Then another question is,
Yes.
if you do not practice loving kindness, or rather the four Brahma Viharas, the four Brahma Viharas, if you do not practice it or aspire to practice it, does it mean that when you do meditation, whatever meditation that you are doing, that you will not enter into absorption?
Okay, why don't I answer your question one by one? All right. And the reason why I'm answering Sriling's question is because this has to do with it sets the foundation for what we're discussing, what we have discussed, and what we are going to discuss today and for the following weeks. So let me see. Sriling, your first question was, yes. So for some people, like myself, I find it easier to develop loving kindness by recollecting the good things or the wholesome things that I've done. And that's what we are going through today. We did a bit of it last week, which has resulted in your question. Today, we're going to look at other things that we can be thankful for or grateful for good things that we can recognize in ourselves. Why do we do that? Well, it's because, okay, hold on, let me just, it's because the nature of our samsaric life is that it is very, very easy, because it is the nature, it is the, is there another word for nature? It is just how life is. It is conditioned. So it is very, very easy to find something lacking. It is very, very easy to feel that life is not satisfying enough. And it's very, very easy to find misery or suffering or affliction in our daily lives or in the lives of others. And given the state of the times we live in, with social media, it is, what you find is that people have a tendency to glorify the good things in other people's lives. For example, like people go on vacations, you get to find that out through either Facebook or all the social. I'm not so familiar with social media platforms, but you always get exposed to other people having a good time. And so when you have that exposure to other people having a good time, it's very easy to see that you are not having that good time yourself. So it is very, very easy to become dissatisfied or to find that there's a lot lacking in our present lives. Okay. So of course, there will be other people better than us. And a lot of times what we see that people share is a very, very small part of their lives. They don't share the other parts that goes on. So unless you are a wheel turning king, okay, unless you're a wheel turning king, you're always going to find someone who has a better life than you, who's enjoying life more than you, in some way or some other, or they have something more that you lack. And even if you are a wheel turning king, okay, the gods in the heavens have a far better life than you do. So it's a never ending kind of thing. So the inherent nature of our existence is that it is always lacking. And if you look, it is always disappointing. It is unstable. And the worst is, every single day we are moving towards decay and death. So it's very, very easy to get swept up in this the nature of life as it actually is. Yes, Sriling, you have another thing to add? No? Okay, no, I'm going to mute you then. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. So that's the first part of the why loving kindness is important. Okay, loving kindness is, you could say, is an antidote to the nature of life. And so you start with yourself before you can begin to have loving kindness for others. There are two ways. Just the wish for happiness for yourself may work. If it doesn't, then you can recollect all the good things that you have done, usually connected with the Dharma, because there's a lot of merit and virtue there that the Buddha has highlighted. So that's the second step in developing loving kindness. And then once you have a good foundation in feeling good about yourself, seeing all the positive, wholesome things about yourself, then you find that it is that you can work on developing loving kindness to others. And then when we get to that section, which will be in a few weeks, there's a formula. You don't start with certain people, and you don't start with, for example, people who are dead, and you don't do loving kindness for people who you might fall in love with, because then it turns into something else before your foundation is strong. So there are also certain guidelines for practicing loving kindness. I'm not sure if that was the entire of your question. Did I miss anything out? Have I got it all? Oh yeah, absorption, the dhyana.
Absorption part.
Yes. According to the text, yes. you do need loving kindness to get to enter what do you call the dhyanas. And there is a sutra. I'm not sure if I have the sutra today, but there is a sutra where the Buddha explains the difference between. So what happens was the Buddha's monks. Okay, the Buddha's monks met people from different beliefs, they had other teachers. And they questioned the monks. They said, so your teacher teaches you loving kindness. Say, our teacher we also learn loving kindness. So what's the difference between, and we also radiate loving kindness to the different directions and all that. So the question was, so what's the difference between your loving kindness and our loving kindness? Something like that. So the monks didn't say anything. Then they went back to the Buddha. And then the Buddha then said loving kindness is combined with meditation. And then loving kindness is the foundation for your mindfulness. And then it extends that mindfulness into concentration and finally into release of attachments and getting wisdom. And the Buddha said that's the difference between the loving kindness of external sects and my teaching. Yeah.
Another thing is it limited only to the first Brahma Vihara? I mean, what about the other three? If you have, say, compassion, will that also lead you to absorption?
Yes.
If you practice,
so the first three, I'm not sure whether the first dhyana corresponds only to loving kindness, and then the second dhyana corresponds only when you have developed compassion. But usually what they say is that the first three Brahma Viharas, which is loving kindness, compassion, and empathetic joy, is linked to the first three dhyanas. And if you want to achieve the fourth dhyana, then you also have to develop the practice of equanimity.
Okay, thank you.
Know. But whether, if you can just by loving kindness, can you enter the second dhyana or not? I'm not quite sure about that. Yeah. Let's start with the first. Thanks. Okay. Let's start with loving kindness. Start with the first dhyana. Okay. Talking about the first dhyana, this reminds me, a few classes ago, I wasn't sure. Actually, I was fairly sure, but I wasn't 100% sure that the first dhyana, whether your breathing stops or the pulse, the heartbeat stops. And someone said that first dhyana, the heartbeat stops, the pulse stops. Actually, that's not entirely correct. According to Shifu says that in the first dhyana, the breathing stops, the in and out movement of air, that stops in the first dhyana, but there's still a pulse. And then in the second dhyana, where the body comes down even more, that's when the pulse or the heartbeat stops. All right. Okay. Let me see. Ron has a question. Okay, Ron, I'll keep your question to the end. Okay. All right. So last week, what we looked at was how we already know loving kindness begins with oneself. And then we looked at what we should be, how do we look at ourselves in a way that loving kindness comes forth naturally. That's a better way to put it. How do we view ourselves? How do we recognize our own wholesomeness so that we generate love? So we not generate loving kindness, we start to love ourselves. Okay, we start to see the value in ourselves. So one of the things we look at was acts of generosity, and why when we practice generosity, we should be, is the right word proud of? We should be proud of ourselves. I think take pride in our acts of generosity. And then the second one is cherishing one's human state. Okay, the fact that you are born as a human. And I have a very interesting story today about cause and effect from Shifu. Okay, so let's continue with cherishing one's human state or human birth. Okay, so I'm just going to read besides being born as a human, the favorable conditions for the Dharma and obtaining enlightenment are being born at the time when a Buddha has arisen, has taught the Dharma, and has left a Sangha that carries on the teachings. At such times, there is a chance to learn the Dharma. So being born at the time when a Buddha has arisen, you can take it to mean when physically there's a Buddha, you are born and get to be in the Buddha's, in the actual Buddha's presence, or like right now, when the Dharma is still around and there's still a Sangha left that can carry on the teachings either in the manifestation or in the verbal teachings. So that is a very good thing to be grateful for. Okay. Number two, being born a human in countries where the Dharma is known, where Buddhism is known and can be practiced, there's a presence of the Sangha and their qualified teachers. So not just being born when the Dharma is around, but being born in a place where you are free to practice the Dharma and you will not be prosecuted or have any negative repercussions to when you are practicing the Dharma. Because if you look at the world right now, there are a lot of places where you may not, or you may not even, if you're born in certain places, you may grow up and your whole life having the perception that the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are very, very foreign elements in life. And there's this natural barrier to you even considering anything to do with the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Yeah. Okay. Being born a human who has a physical and intellectual capacity to grasp the basic message of the Dharma and ask questions, okay, that you should be very happy about. Accepting the relationship between good and or evil actions and their consequences, believing that good actions will lead to a happier life, a better rebirth, or to enlightenment. This is about cause and effect. And it is one of the basic right views that you should have as a Buddhist. The next one is confidence in the moral teachings conveyed in the Vinaya, meaning in the precepts. You have confidence that the precepts are wholesome. And this should be easy if you understand cause and if you believe in cause and effect, if you have faith, confidence in cause and effect. The next one is avoiding crimes against people and against the Dharma. And then the last one is having sincere compassion for other people. Okay, so these are the things that you can be, that you can look for in yourself. All right. And a lot of these are, how you say, for all of you listening, you're already doing most of it, so it's very easy to generate loving kindness or to recognize these wholesome traits in yourself already. It's like free. It's not free. You work hard for it, either from past lives or this life, but you're already there. Yes, Ron, what was your question?
Yes, Pastor, thank you. I'm sorry, but there is so much notes. This is a great topic. Can you share where all, like if there's a sutra that this comes from that we should read, or I'd like to, I can't copy everything out here, but I'd like to be able to go back and read about this. This is good stuff.
Okay. So Ron, your question, I had the same exact question when I was preparing these two particular slides that we had just gone through, because normally when I prepare my notes, I have the source and I'm able to give you the source so that all of you can investigate the source for yourself, because sometimes I might interpret it differently or even wrongly, because the best I can do is interpret according to my own understanding. And also why you have the source is so that you can interpret it according to your own understanding as well. So I might be correct, but only as far as my experience goes. And then you might have a better understanding from your own experience. Unfortunately, these 2 slides that we have, 2 or 3 slides that I've just gone through, I tried looking for the source, but I can't remember where I got it from. So I'm sorry. Yeah. If it makes sense, remember, try to follow it. If it doesn't make sense, then disregard it. But the next one, okay, the next one is from Shufu. It is from Shufu's Talks on Dharma, the volumes 1 to 11. I don't know which volume this one is, but it's from one of those. Yeah. So Shufu says that the Dharma is in practice, not in talking. Okay. So these 2 slides we are going to look at is about looking at your practice, observing your practice, and being proud of your practice. Is there a better word than being proud? Okay, if there is a word, please let me know. Okay. So what Shufu says is it says it's because the way and virtue are a person's foundation. Once we have the way and virtue, we can stand on our own feet. Virtue, you can take it to mean as how we control our senses and how we relate to the people around us in wholesome ways. Okay, so Shufu says time is like an arrow. The days and months fly by like a shuttlecock. The waves in the, okay, if maybe some of you may not be familiar with what a shuttlecock is. That's the thing that you play, that you hit in the game badminton, back and forth. Okay, so Shufu says time flies by like a shuttlecock. The waves in the river follow one after another. Glory fades quickly. In the world, youth is followed by old age. In this way, we gradually return to the decay and extinction of old age and death, leaving no trace or shadow. Clearly, everything is impermanent. Since everything is impermanent, we should quickly find refuge. All of you can count yourselves lucky, for you have searched around and finally come to believe in the Buddha. Faith in the Buddha enables us to attain the ultimate happiness of permanence. Joy, let me see, there should be a comma, of permanence, joy, true self, and purity. Therefore, we should believe in the Buddha. But it's not enough to say that we believe. We also have to cultivate according to the Dharma. If you believe but don't cultivate, okay, if you believe but don't cultivate, it's like talking about food without eating it or counting the wealth of others. It doesn't benefit you in the least. Okay, so Shufu is talking about encountering the Dharma, and he's talking about taking refuge. So the next few slides are all about taking refuge, and that's where the interesting story comes in. Is spoiler alert, is a story about a snake, about not just a normal snake, but a snake with magical powers. Okay, but before we get there, some of you may find this boring, but it is very important. So taking refuge. So again, this is taken from the BTTS published volumes called Venerable Master's Talks on Dharma, volume 1 to 11. I believe this is volume number 6. All right. Shufu says the greatest thing in life is to take refuge with the triple jewel. The triple jewel is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. You have to be serious about this. Don't treat it casually and don't act on a whim. First of all, you have to choose a teacher of genuine understanding and wisdom to take refuge with. That way, when there is some principle you do not understand, you will receive the proper guidance that will allow you to gain insight into that Buddha's knowledge and views. Don't join external sects or sects that seek truth outside the mind or listen to the instructions of misguided teachers. Okay, I think there's a typo there. I'm sorry. Disregard the last few words. Recently, I had the experience of meeting someone from an external sect. I won't name what sect they are from, but they told me what they believe in the hopes that they could convince me, I think. Yeah. It turns out that they are supposed to be based on Buddhism, but they don't know very much about the Buddha's teachings. And so what they believe in is that there's a book that has your name on it. And that book, I think, is held by King Yama. So what happens is you undergo an initiation ceremony where a qualified teacher, and this teacher was present at that time when I was told this teacher will place 3 dots on your head and do this ceremony. And this ceremony will allow you to return when you die. Okay. This ceremony will enable King Yama, or will instruct King Yama to strike your name off this book. So when you die, you won't go to King Yama. Instead, you will proceed back to your original home, and which is where you came from. And there were a few other things that I don't really remember or care to remember. Although I did have a question. I said, okay, if you came from this original home, you're returning to your original home, what's to prevent you from falling back again? Since you were already from there and then you were born here. But I don't recall what the answer was. I don't think it was very satisfying. So these are considered external sects because they are looking externally, but they do pray to, and when I say pray, I mean pray, not like us. When we pray, is more of a reverence and recollecting the virtues and trying to mold ourselves in the form of like the Buddha or the Bodhisattvas. For them, they pray as in looking for salvation to Guanyin, and I think Maitreya or Manjushri Bodhisattva, I don't remember. Yeah. So these are called external sects because they depend on an external external party for your salvation. Whereas in the Buddha's teachings, in terms of cause and effect, you have to plant the causes for the right conditions to end your own birth and death. If not, then the Buddha could easily just let everyone get enlightened through his power, but he can't. It's not something that the Buddha can do, even though he's the Buddha. Yeah. Okay, so that's what Shufu says, don't join external sects. So then Shufu says, the verse for taking refuge with the triple jewel says, to the Buddha I return and rely, vowing that all living beings understand the great way profoundly and bring forth the Bodhi mind. Incidentally, in the Buddha hall, this is what we recite twice a day. To the Dharma I return and rely, vowing that all living beings deeply enter the Sutra treasury and have wisdom like the sea. To the Sangha I return and rely, vowing that all living beings form together a great assembly, one and all in harmony. So for most of us, okay, we recite this like like a prayer or something, or just recite. But if you slow down and if you look at the verses, there's a lot of significance, and the significance increases with your understanding and your how far down the path you are. Okay, so if you're new to Buddhism, you recite just like everyone recites. Okay, everyone recites in the Buddha hall, you just follow along, and then you don't think about it at all. But if you're fairly advanced and you look at the return and rely, you return and rely to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. So whenever you have any issues in life, whenever you have any problems, where do you turn to? You turn to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Okay. And the second thing is you vow that all living beings. So what does it mean? Vow that all living beings. The first one is understand the great way profoundly and bring forth the Bodhi mind. What does that mean to you? Well, if Guanyin Bodhisattva comes to you and says, well, I vow that that you will understand the great way profoundly and that you will bring forth the bony mind. What does that mean? That means Guanyin will do all that she can, okay, for you to understand the great way and for you to bring forth the bony mind, right? So these three verses, okay, the meaning in these three verses can go as deep as you allow them to go, depending on you. Because just this alone can carry you to Buddhahood. Just these three verses. Because if you really take it seriously, like you vow that all living beings understand the great way profoundly, then, the next logical question will be how? Because you don't understand the great way yourself. So then you have to do all that you can to understand the great way first. Just like loving kindness, you develop it for yourself first. You have to find the great way first and understand it, and not just understand it, but understand it in such a way and to develop the affinities with living beings in such a way that you can make them understand and make them bring forth the body mind. So there's a lot of skills required to do that. And that alone will transform your practice in the Dharma. Then secondly, we'll be doing the same for the Dharma and the Sangha. So when we take refuge, those are the three vows that we are supposed to commit ourselves to. And until you take these vows seriously and you allow these vows to have an effect on your practice, you have not taken, the vows are just words that you recite. Okay, all right. So Shufu says you take these three vows when you take refuge, and then he says, if your faith is solid and your conduct is pure, then from the time you formally take refuge until you become a Buddha, you will not run into any great difficulties. If your faith is weak and your conduct is impure, then you can forget about becoming a Buddha. Why? Cause and effect. It's all up to you. It says you will have a hard time just being a person. Not only lay people, but even left-home people will fall into the hells if they do not cultivate. So it has nothing to do with the clothes that you wear or the lifestyle that you lead. It has to do with whether you practice or not. Okay. Shufu said you should revere, make offerings, believe, and serve the triple jewel all your life. Then you will have a response in the way. This line is tricky because sometimes, okay, due to, for example, other external sects, this line can mean that people taking advantage of you. But in Buddhism, because of cause and effect, it takes on a whole different dimension, because whatever you do is building a foundation towards ending birth and death. So it's very, very different. You're not doing it for the benefit of other people or to please God or gods or to get into anyone's, any deity's good books. No, you do it because there is a direct benefit to your practice. Okay. Shufu says, if you cannot do this after you take refuge and you still act as if you had not taken refuge at all, then you will not have any responses. What are responses here? People usually think of responses like supernatural responses, like you hear the Buddha's voice coming from the sky or something like that. Responses here, yes, might include those kinds of responses, but it is more, how you say, if you do it well, okay, then the responses will be a reduction in your greed, your anger, your ill will, and your ignorance, and increase in wisdom. Okay, all right. Those are more powerful than any supernatural seeing the face of the Buddha in the sky. Yes, that might be, that might happen. I know someone who has seen that before, and it might help spur you in your practice. But for if you don't have the right figure that's not going to help you at all if it doesn't reduce your greed, anger, and ignorance. Okay. Shufu says, every morning when you get up, you should make the 4 vast vows before the Buddha. Okay, vows. Okay, the keyword is vows, like the 3 great vows just now. Vows are not, vows are promises. Okay, they are not just words that they're not wishes. Okay, they're not thoughts and prayers. Vows are actually very powerful promises that you make. So these are vows that every bodhisattva should make. Make these vows in the morning and in the evening. Ask yourself, living beings are limitless. Have I saved them? Second one, I have vowed to cut off the endless afflictions. Have I cut them off? If not, I must cut them off. If I haven't saved living beings, then I must save them. If I haven't gotten rid of my afflictions, I must cast them out. So these are the first 2 great vows. Third great vow, I have vowed to learn the boundless Dharma doors. That means all the various practices. But have I learned them? No, then I must do so. No matter how busy I am, I ought to devote time to reciting sutras and reading Buddhist books in order to learn the boundless Dharma doors. Number 4, I have vowed to accomplish the unsurpassed Buddha way, but I am still an ordinary person, not a Buddha. So I must hurry and cultivate in order to realize Buddhahood. So Shufu says you should contemplate in this way every day. In the morning, make the 4 vast vows, and in the evening, reflect to see whether you have fulfilled them. So just by these 4 vows, 4 great vows alone, all right, if you do this practice morning and evening, and you are mindful of them, then I don't need to talk to you about loving kindness anymore. Okay, because you would look at loving kindness and you will look at yourself and you say, yes, I'm really trying my best. Yeah, and you would you would already have loving kindness. Okay, then you can stop listening and just continue doing what you do. Okay, all right. But if not, then let's continue. Okay, the next one is Shufu talking about losing the human body. All right, remember the story the simile the Buddha gave about a yoke with a hole floating in the ocean, blown by the 4 winds in the different directions, and then a blind turtle, once a man comes up for air and the head happens to come through this hole in the yoke. Buddha says the chances of that happening is the same as you being reborn a human. Okay, so Shufu in this story, he says, disbelieve anything else, but don't disbelieve cause and effect. It is extremely dangerous to deny cause and effect. Today, since a member of the Eightfold Division of Dharma protecting spirits appeared to speak the Dharma, I have briefly described its background in terms of causes and effects. So this is a snake that has appeared, and we'll come to the snake later. Shufu says, a bodhisattva fears causes, not effects. In his cultivation, a bodhisattva is very careful to create good causes. If he accidentally creates a bad cause, he bravely faces reality and accepts his retribution without ever complaining. That's the saying. Prevention. Yes, prevention is better than cure, right? Same principle. A bodhisattva fears the causes, not the effects. Whereas ordinary people like us, it says living beings, fear effects instead of causes. We carelessly plant causes without even realizing what we are doing. Excuse me. Then when we get the effects, then we get upset. So Shufu says living beings create causes thoughtlessly and recklessly. When the time comes to face the retributions, they are frightened. They complain to the heavens and blame other people, saying, why do I get such lousy treatment? Why is life so unfair? It never occurs to them that if they hadn't created such causes in the past, they would not be receiving such retributions now. With one wrong move, the entire chess game is lost. She was says, if you have a single bad thought, the resulting disasters will be difficult to avert. Fortunately, the snake has taken refuge with a triple jewel and thus has the opportunity to eventually understand the mind and see the nature. If you don't believe this story, go ahead and try it out yourself. If you do believe in cause and effect, don't harbor the slightest bit of doubt. Then from here on, Shufu talks about the story of the snake. Basically, this whole talk, if you ask me, is catered towards the Dharma, the snake, which is what everyone saw was a snake, a literal snake that came to the Buddha hall. Excuse me, just let me drink some water. Excuse me. But Shufu revealed that this was actually a spirit, animal spirit. There was a Maharoga, a great python spirit. But, okay, it is now 10:30. We have 15 minutes. And I realize I always keep the answers to the questions rather late. So today, or hopefully from now on, I shall try to answer the questions earlier. Then if you have more time, we'll come back to this story. Okay. But if we don't, then we'll do the story next week. Okay. So Ron has a question. Ron says, what is better, reborn in the Deva heaven because one cultivated metta or loving kindness, or take the Bodhisattva precepts and be reborn in Saha? Okay. So Ron's question is, which is better? Okay. Cultivate metta and get reborn in the Deva heavens, because last week or week before, one of the benefits of metta is that if you practice well and you get reborn in the heavens, unlike the other heavenly beings who, when their blessings end and their life ends, they fall either into the hell realms, the animal realm, or to the human realm. But if you have practiced metta, then you do not fall. Okay, instead you progress on the path. Second part of the question is that better, or the second, or you take the Bodhisattva precepts and be reborn in the Saha world? Okay, so my answer to you, Ron, is neither one. Okay, I wouldn't choose either one, because there's another option which is related, and that option is the Pure Land. And the Pure Land basically combines both loving kindness, okay, as you can see from the practice of Guanyin, okay, because if you want to go Pure Land, Guanyin will greet you and take you to the Pure Land. So the Pure Land practice combines both loving kindness as well as the Bodhisattva precepts. So instead of being reborn in the Saha world or being reborn in the heavens, basically you get reborn in the Pure Land. Now, the Pure Land is not a place that you go to have fun like the heavens, where you get lost in sensual bliss and you pluck flowers and make flower garlands and you drink heavenly nectar and all those things, and then you enjoy yourself silly until it's time to die, then you panic. No, okay, the Pure Land is not like that. Think of the Pure Land as kind of like CDTB. Okay, it's a place that's very conducive to practice. Of course, it's a nice place. Okay, look at the descriptions of the Pure Land, both metaphorical and literally, it is a very nice place. Okay, but to get there, your mindset, okay, which is very important, is one that should be geared towards practice. So you're not going to the Pure Land with enjoyment in mind, although the Pure Land is free of afflictions. Okay, that's a very important distinction. You're not going there, you're going there to practice, but you're also going to a place where it's free from suffering. Okay, and that kind of mindset is very hard to develop. But you can, if you have your priorities right. There's a family that I know who is very close to the Dharma, and they are in CDTB right now. and they left before the bowing started, and they'll be coming back in a few days after the bowing. And let me see who is there. The wife, I think one or two of their children. I know one of the children is studying in the school, so she's there as well. But they travel all the way to CDTB, and they're not going anywhere else. They're not going to Disneyland or excuse me, let me drink more water. Normal people would say, okay, since I'm going to go to all the way from Malaysia to California and spend so much money, I'm already going to be there. Maybe out of 3-4 weeks, let's take maybe 1-2 weeks and go a few places, enjoy the scenery, experience a whole different cultural experience, weather, and spend maybe a weekend or a few days or a week or two at CDTB. Most normal people would do that, but not this family. This family, single, only one aim in mind: go to CDTB, join the bowing, and maybe take 1 or 2 days off. Maybe, they're not monks or nuns, right? And then come back. And they're very, very happy to do that. And they feel very blessed to do that. They feel very lucky that they are able to undergo that experience. So that's the kind of mindset that you want for yourself when if you are aiming towards the Pure Land. So what happens then is when you go to the Pure Land, according to the sutras, then you hone your bodhisattva skills. And when you finally come back to the Saha world, you come back in a position where you're in control, rather than birth and death or your karma is in control. Okay, Ron? So taking the bodhisattva precepts and being reborn in the Saha world, you're not in control yet. You have just taken the bodhisattva precepts, but you have not done anything to be in control of your own destiny. So it's a very dicey proposition. Whereas if you aim to go to the Pure Land and you do it well, and you do actually get to the Pure Land, when you come back to the Saha world, you won't be, Shifu calls it a clay bodhisattva. So why Shifu calls it a clay bodhisattva? A clay bodhisattva, when they cross the sea of suffering, because they're made of clay, they melt, they get dissolved in the water. So when you go to the Pure Land and you come back, you're no longer a clay bodhisattva. You might be clay, but you're fired in the kiln, so you are waterproof and you're hard and you're strong. And not only you will not be affected by the suffering, but you can save other living beings as well. Okay, so what is better, being reborn in the Deva heavens by cultivating metta, or taking bodhisattva precepts and being reborn in the Saha world? I would say neither. Go aim for the Pure Land. All right. Okay. Then I have another question that was asked to me about the difference between normal wisdom and transcendental wisdom. Okay. So to answer this, let me show you this. I have to look for it. Excuse me. Let me look for it. Okay. Let me show you on screen. I have to increase the size. So the question is about what is the difference between normal wisdom and transcendental wisdom. And I will use the Noble Eightfold Path as a starting point. If you look at your screen, number 2, that I highlighted, number 2, right view. Right view is known, you start the Noble Eightfold Path is in other words, it means our practice. When you practice in Buddhism, whatever it is that you're doing in Buddhism, it should fall within what the Noble Eightfold Path is. If not, then it's not considered proper Buddhist practice. Okay. Which is why in the future I want to make a class that talks about that understands the Pure Land practice through the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, but that's for the future. For now, right view can be known as sometimes some people call it right understanding, or some people call it right wisdom. Okay, all right. So what is right view? You start off with mundane right view or mundane wisdom. What is mundane wisdom? Mundane wisdom is what we're doing right now. Listening to the sutras, reading the sutras, thinking and pondering over the principles, applying in our everyday lives, and how you say, how do you describe when you do something and then you pay attention to what it is that you're doing, and then when you study, you get because of your practice, when you read the sutras again, you get a deeper understanding. You know, where your learning is put into practice, and then your practice informs your learning, and it is like a feedback loop where your understanding becomes deeper and deeper. Okay, so that's mundane wisdom. Mundane wisdom involves our sixth consciousness, the mind that we're using right now. It involves imagination, it involves logic, it involves discrimination, knowing like right from wrong, how to do this. Let me see what else. All the ways that your mind works, that falls under mundane wisdom. Okay, so thinking things over in a logical fashion, using our memory. I learned this before, and now I'm learning something new, and then you combine it, and then thinking how to do it, and then doing it, and then paying attention, observing yourself, and then going back to the sutras and realizing, oh, now I see it differently because I practice it after a few months or a few years. All those falls under mundane wisdom. Okay, and then when do you get to transcendental wisdom? Okay, when you have done the practice well according to the Noble Eightfold Path, you end up with transcendental wisdom. So you start off with mundane wisdom, and you end up with transcendental wisdom. Transcendental wisdom begins when you break the skandhas down, when you break the notion of a self. When in the Heart Sutra, it says when Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara eliminated the 5 skandhas, and he saw they are all empty, and he left behind all suffering and difficulty. I may have gotten that 95% correct. Something like that. Illuminated the 5 skandhas means you break through the 5 skandhas. What are the 5 skandhas? Also known as the 5 aggregates, the 5 skandhas are what we take to be the self. The 5 skandhas are our body, our eye, including our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and then the mind. So the body and the workings of our mind, we take it to be who we are. We think that it is us, the I, the me, our name. That's who we are. But the Buddha says, no, that's not self. Shufu says it's mistaking the thief for your son. At night you hear a sound, then you say, oh, that's my son coming back. Actually, it's a thief coming to rob you blind. So Shufu says, thinking the skandhas are you is like mistaking fish eyes for pearls. Okay, only a stupid person would look at fish eyes and think they are valuable pearls, or mistaking a thief for his son. So that's the doctrine of non-self or not self, not no self, okay, but not self. Okay, so when you have seen through your 5 skandhas, and you are no longer confused by your own body and by your own mind, which is the 6th consciousness, then that's where your transcendental wisdom comes about. It is not based on a deduction of logic or figuring things out. You don't have to rely on memory to know what you've learned before in order to learn something, so like now, for example, if someone asks you, what is 6 times 6? People will answer 36 because they have memorized it before, right? Or you have memorized the formula of what 6 times 6 means, and then you can figure it out, and then you can give the answer 36. That's mundane wisdom. Okay, it depends on layers of cognition and the mind working and previous experience and memory and understanding and learning for you to understand something. That's why as a baby, you don't understand anything. They don't have any wisdom yet. Transcendental wisdom is very, very different. Okay, first of all, in transcendental wisdom, everything is very quiet. Your experience of life is very, very quiet because the sound that's in your head is no longer there. The noises that you make on a microsecond basis as you go through the world is no longer there. Everything is very, very quiet. And the best way I can explain it is as soon as you have a question, the answer comes at the same time. That's the only way I can explain it. Is you don't even have to have the whole question. You just have to have the beginning of a question. That if your mind moves towards a certain aspect that you want to know, as your mind moves there, at the same time, the answer comes. If that makes sense. I don't know how else to explain. Okay, so that's one function of transcendental wisdom. It comes from inside you. It comes from your nature. It doesn't come from you having to learn something or having to figure something out or to know something. So an instance is like the sixth patriarch. When someone asked him a question and he said, "Oh, I cannot read." He said, "Recite." Someone asked him a question about a sutra and he said, "Oh, I cannot read," meaning he has not read the sutra before. And he asked the person to recite the lines that he wanted to explain, that he wanted the sixth patriarch to explain. And this person was astonished. He said, "Oh, how come you haven't read the sutra before, but you can explain the sutra?" Because the sixth patriarch was explaining from his own nature, from his real wisdom. Okay, so that's transcendental wisdom. So along the way, okay, and sometimes you will meet these people in life. Along the way, sometimes due to past cultivation or present cultivation practices, sometimes the people's relationship with the skandhas break down. So what happens is people have supernatural, for lack of a better word, abilities. So sometimes some people can see certain things, like, some people can see spirits or ghosts. Some people can hear certain things, or some people can be a medium for spiritual entities. Whether there's wisdom there or not, it depends. For example, like in the story I'm supposed to share about the snake, when Shufu saw the snake, Shufu could teach the snake Dharma by explaining to the snake's own history about how he became a snake. Shufu could see the causes and effects behind the physical appearance. Some people can just see, but they can't see the connections. So for example, someone who can see, they see the snake and they realize, oh, this is not a normal snake, this is a great python snake. They might get scared and they might run away, or they warn everyone, run away, this is a huge spirit snake, and it's not a normal snake. Shufu, because of his wisdom that arise, reacted very, very differently. So there are a whole spectrum of within mundane wisdom and even within the transcendental wisdom stage, where depending on your progress along the path, the result, the experience and the results can be very, very different. So there's this story where there was this old man during the Buddha's time. He wanted to become a monk because he felt like life wasn't worth living anymore. So he went to see the Buddha, who wasn't there, and he met the arhats. He told the arhats he wanted to leave home. The arhats then used their transcendental wisdom, and they look at this old man's past lives, and they said for 84,000, either 84,000 eons or 84,000 past lives, but they look back a long, long time, and they realized that this old man had not done anything to, I think the wording was, he did not create enough merit. In other words, he did not plan any causes for the conditions for him to become a monk, as far as they could see. Okay. So they told him, oh, we cannot accept you as a monk. You don't have the qualities. But when I say that, I mean, like, in stretching back lifetimes. So this old man was very distraught, and he said, oh, if I can't become a monk, then I must as well die. So he walked to a bridge where he was going to commit suicide. And along came the Buddha, who he didn't recognize. He just saw an old man. And the Buddha said, hey, what are you trying to do? He said, oh, I'm going to end my life because I want to become a monk. But the Buddha's disciples say that I have not done anything worthy before in order for me to become a monk. So I'm just going to end my life because I don't find life worth living anymore. So the Buddha said, oh, no, I'm the Buddha and you can leave home. So on the spot, the Buddha uttered the words, Ahi Bhikkhu. He says, come Bhikkhu. And it is said that if the Buddha were to accept you as a monk, your hair automatically falls off. The robes appear on you, as well as your arms bowl, like magic, apparently. So on the spot, he became a monk. Then he went back with the Buddha, and the arhats then asked the Buddha, said, oh, we looked into this person's past lives before, and we did not find a reason. He has not done anything for us to be able to ordain him. I think that sounds a lot, makes more sense. Then the Buddha said, well, that's because all of you as arhats could only look back 84,000 past lives. But me as the Buddha, I can look back further. And the Buddha said there was a point further back which you all couldn't see with your wisdom, although it's transcendental wisdom. Said this old man in one of his past lives was chased by a tiger. So he climbed up a tree and he shouted the Buddha's name, but he mispronounced the Buddha's name. But although he mispronounced the Buddha's name, that is enough for him to deserve to become a monk. Yeah, I'm not sure if he became an arhat. I don't recall the story very well. But there you go. So even at the level of arhats compared to the Buddha, there are very significant levels of wisdom, although transcendental. Okay, so true transcendental wisdom, I would say, happens when you break through the skandhas. Until then, there are levels of wisdom. For example, like how the Hindu religion came about, the Brahman religion, the former inhabitant of the Brahma realm became a monk, now died, came reborn as a human, meditated until he could recall his past life, and then created the whole Brahma religion. That's one, but it was very, very limited because he could only see one past life. Yeah. So I would say true transcendental wisdom comes when you have broken through the notion of a self and the five skandhas. Until then, there are various degrees. And then even after transcendental wisdom, like the bodhisattvas, they all have different levels. And then the Buddha has perfect transcendental wisdom. Okay. All right. I hope that has answered my auntie's question. I have gone past time. So let me end this slideshow. I'm so sorry to keep everyone waiting. Sometimes I feel like 1 hour is too short. But when I'm preparing for the class, 1 hour feels like it's too long. Okay. Any more questions? Anyone? Okay, if not, let's dedicate merit. And then we'll come to the story of the snake next week. It's a very interesting story. Okay. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave our grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Alright everyone, we'll see you next week. Amitabha.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Dharma Master.